Situated at the junction of the Palearctic, Indo-Chinese and Indo-Malayan biogeographic regions, the eastern Himalayan province of Arunachal Pradesh is part of one of the mega biodiversity hotspots of the world. Its location and geographical variation have resulted in an assemblage of several endemic and globally threatened flora and fauna in this region. The region supports around 6,000 plant species, 100 species of mammals, 680 species of birds and a large number of butterflies and insects. This uniqueness of the landscape makes it a very important place for the conservation of globally threatened bird species. The biggest threat to wildlife around the world is loss of habitat, and India is no exception to this reality. The protected areas in the country can only safeguard the species under their jurisdiction. However, wildlife does not understand these human-made boundaries and traverses across protected areas. Generally, such lands are owned by local communities and act as a buffer for protected areas. However, they are vulnerable to exploitation. If their biodiversity has to be protected, then such lands require the involvement of the local communities to maintain them. Unless this buffer is safeguarded, the protected areas will become island ecosystems, and the future of the animals in these areas will be in jeopardy. The areas owned by the communities make ideal community-conserved areas. A community-conserved area is a land set aside by the community for the purpose of conservation of biodiversity. The area is designated by the communities based on the values identified by them and administered with the help of local rules and regulations and through local institutions. The benefits arising from such interventions range from improved food security and better land management to income to the communities through employment and support to community projects. Most importantly, they help in the conservation of biodiversity and an ecosystem at large. The community conserved area can work as a catalyst and model for the conservation of wildlife and its habitat outside the protected area regime. In Arunachal Pradesh, 3 such community conserved areas exist: the Upper Thani Valley, Sangti village and the areas around Mega, Malo and Deepu villages. However, 2 more communities are on the way to declare their territories as community conserved areas. They are located at the eastern and western ends of the state. At the eastern end, the Idu Mishmi community protects about 50 square kilometers of forest, while at the western end, the Bugun community protects about 30 square kilometers of forest near the Eagle Nest Wildlife Sanctuary.
अभी जो मैं यहाँ बैठा हूँ ये जो है मेहा वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी, आई एम इनसाइड पीए, और हमारे जो पीछे जो दिखाई दे रहा है देयर इज आउटसाइड पीए, जो दिस लैंड हैज बीन ओन बाय द कम्युनिटी. तो कम्युनिटी के लैंड है, तभी भी हमने इसको कंजर्वेशन, इसको ये ज़्यादा करना है. इसमें इसका अंदर में क्या चीज़ है स्टडी करने के लिए, कम्युनिटी को फॉर्म करने के लिए विचार था. उसके बाद मैंने वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी से भी डीएफओ से भी हमने एनओसी क्लियरेंस लिया कि ये आपके अंदर में आता है कि नहीं आता है. तो उन्होंने बोला कि हमको एनओसी दिया और बताया कि ये सेंचुरी के अंदर में नहीं आता है. सो ये ज़मीन को अभी हमने ये विचार किया कि सब कम्युनिटी को इन्वॉल्व करके इसको कैसा प्रोटेक्शन में लाया जाए, और इसके अंदर में क्या क्या चीज़ है स्टडी करने के लिए एक ग्रुप हम फॉर्म करना चाहता है.
The Idu Mishmi land lies adjacent to the mighty river Brahmaputra and is elevated up to 5,000 meters. It shares its border with the Mehau Wildlife Sanctuary. About 2 years ago, the community decided to put an embargo on the hunting of wildlife in its area. This resulted in the initiation of a community conserved area and a People's Biodiversity Register at Jimbo village. This area has great potential for wildlife tourism, especially for the birds. it can become a viable alternative livelihood for the community.
So the only part of tourism which I was doing was bird watching tourism. So I started getting people slowly to Mishmi Hills, and then slowly people, boys like Ravi joined me, and any other boys joined me. And when we really first came here, it was a big problem here. Like when we would see some birds, people would come with guns and shoot them after we saw them. But now, since for the last 3 or 4 years, that's really gone down. And now it so happens that IPRA has and Ravi Mekhola and some people, they want to start a conservation area which belongs to their tribe. My vision is that to every part of Arunachal Pradesh, wherever I go, I would like to bring up this young youth so that it can lead for them to conserve the area, the animal species, the bird species, and many other species.
Systematic and targeted efforts in capacity building of the community can justify this intervention. Training in hospitality, accounting, housekeeping, marketing, human resource management, and leadership can result in a successful enterprise. This enterprise can become self-sustainable after initial monitoring and support. The Bugun community came into the limelight after the discovery of Bugun Laochikla in 2006. The Bugun community utilized this opportunity by initiating community-based ecotourism and protection of biodiversity at Lama Camp. The Eagle Nest Wildlife Sanctuary is one of the natural wonders of the world due to its myriad floral and faunal elements. This has become one of the favorite destinations for bird watchers the world over. This amalgamation of conservation and livelihood has created a model for future conservation efforts in the region.
There are two wildlife sanctuaries, Mehao Wildlife Sanctuary and Diring National Park are the two major landscapes, and the landscape which is in between them, the human landscape in between them, is dominated by humans, the Idumishmi tribes. Here what we are trying to do with the help of Idumishmi tribe, we are trying to conserve area about 42 square kilometer and another area which is about 8 square kilometer, which is abode for globally threatened species. There are about 14 globally threatened birds in this landscape and about 9 mammal species in this landscape.
The community conserved area is important because it helps in protecting critical ecosystems and biodiversity hotspots and providing a buffer, corridors and linkages for animal movement between protected areas. This aids in maintaining essential ecosystem services, especially provisioning and regulatory services. It also helps in safeguarding traditional knowledge systems of the communities.
इससे आइडेंटिफाई होता है कि
Okay. These are tribal communities which over centuries have been protecting their lands in northeast India, and it's one of the richest area for biodiversity point of view in this country. Now these are not just private lands, these are also at places connecting corridors between two protected areas. These are beautiful catchment areas for rivers that originate into those regions. And considering the fact that developing new protected areas in India is always going to be a challenge, be it sanctuary or a national park. Therefore, recognizing these spaces and looking at how best therefore we can work with communities to save those spaces assumes a great significance as well as great challenge.
Both the Idumishmi and the Bugun community areas have a unique assemblage and qualify to be perfect candidates for community conserved areas. However, these areas are threatened by the timber mafia, illegal poaching and developmental work such as hydroelectric projects. Unless proper protection is given, these buffers and corridors will be lost forever. Saving such areas which are outside the protected area regime is very important for the conservation of the region's biodiversity. The Bombay Natural History Society is assisting the Idu Mishmi community to establish a community conserved area which can be a role model for wildlife conservation outside the protected area regime. In addition to this, the BNHS proposes to initiate a People's Biodiversity Register that will enable and empower communities to understand and establish their rights over the resources. Once empowered, the communities can design and take more effective conservation actions, which in turn will make their lives more sustainable.